recorded. Alrighty, here is our shared screen, and we're going to look at it from the beginning. So it's going to cover 6, 7, 8, 4, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 25, 26, 27. It's a ton. 15, 16, 17, 4, 5, 13, and 28. So make sure. No, it's not an all-inclusive study guide, but it's pretty close. All right, so the first thing we talk about is community. Remember, community is going to be our person, place, and function. When we look at the different people in our community, we're going to make sure that we look at data sources such as census data, tourist bureau, civic groups and churches, libraries, police stations, welfare, and state departments would be data sources to measure the function. Okay, and our dimension of place would be measured with data sources of map. So looking at our community slide here, what's this question that may come out of this one? Anybody?
So let all that apply?
Well, maybe. But I want you guys to focus on something specifically. I want you to look at what we're, when we're measuring the different parts, that's going to be important for your test. So we're measuring dimension of the people. We're going to look at our census data, our tourist bureau, civic groups, and churches. When we look at the functions dimensions, we're going to look at libraries, police stations, welfare agencies, and make sure that we know when we're looking at data sources. We're going to look at maps, newspapers, and the housing office. Any question on that one? Okay. Please, if you're just joining, will you put your name and a professor in the chat? We're just starting community assessment. So when we look at community and we're assessing, what are some of the things that we look for when we're assessing communities?
What are the vulnerable populations within that community? Who's at more risk for something that might be going on?
Good. What else are we looking at? Hint, hint, it's on the slide. What are we looking at when we're looking at communities and the health of the communities? We're looking at spirituality, wellness, learning, inclusion, recreational activities, infrastructure and services, safety and security, our leadership, and our economics. So this is just some of the things we look at when we're looking at community. What I want you to remember is when we are doing a community assessment, we're going to make sure that we include all those systems that are found within the community, such as politics, education, recreation, economics, and religion. Please focus on those 5 things. Okay, because that's really what we focus on when we're doing a community assessment. There's 2 different types that we'll see. We have active and we have passive. Anybody remember what active would be? So active is going to be, go ahead, anybody.
A business that provides low-cost snacks.
Yeah, that's on the slide. Very good. Yep. And it's on your study guide. So what we want to remember, example of an active participant, when you're in an active partnership in a community, you're going to have other people involved in it. Okay. You're going to focus on community leader businesses and organizations. So they have a larger goal of collaboration. An example is, like you just said, a business that's going to work with the schools to work on providing snacks. If you have something that's going on that's not impacting multiple factors, like a new park, a hospital with a vaccine clinic, or a recreation center offering cooking classes, that's going to be more of a passive, not active, where you're engaged and engaging other parts of the community. Is that pretty clear? Anybody want to come up with a question on that paragraph? No. How about the following is an example of an active partnership? A city creating a new park, a hospital providing vaccination clinic, or a business that's providing low snacks to an after-school program. Right? We know which one of those would be active. Yes, no, nobody's responding. You guys are quiet.
Those low snacks. The other ones
Yeah.
are passive.
Yep, so that type of question. Good. Then we look at data gathering and versus generation. These are two definitions that I want you to know. Data generation is when we get data that does not exist, but we see it by interacting with the community. So we go out there and we see what are some of the values, beliefs, and social norms that we see that we can generate our data from. Okay, and data gathering is going to be exactly what it says. You're going to gather the information that is already there that you can look up, like the age, racial distribution, and health organizations. Okay, so when we're gathering, we're doing just that. We're getting it together, what we already have. Generating, think of the word generating. When you generate something, you're going to produce something. Okay, so you're going to have to go out there and actually involve yourself in the community. Look at our values and our beliefs and such. All right, Windshield Survey, you guys have this coming up this week. You guys are doing your windshield surveys in your communities. So I would imagine on the test, there would be something along the lines of what is a windshield survey, maybe. So it's pretty easy if you think about it. Windshield just means you're looking out the window. And that's really all you have to do in these circumstances. You're gonna look out the window. And what's most important when you're looking out the window and you're looking at a community? Any kind of assessment. It's particularly emphasized here, but on the windshield. But what do you have to know before you can assess a community? Do you have to know where it starts and when it ends, where it ends, if we're looking at a community, for sure. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at our boundaries and say, okay, it goes for 30 miles, 30 square miles, and you know, it starts at the river and ends at the railroad tracks, okay? When we look at this windshield survey, we're looking at our population size, socioeconomic qualities, and government structures. So it's a question that we may see here about any of this.
Like
Select
what
all that
factors
apply.
are in the, yeah.
Go ahead, what?
Select all that apply.
Okay, you could see a select all that apply. What would the question be?
Something like what factors are in a windshield survey?
Okay, and what do we have to make sure we're doing with windshield surveys? Blah. What do we have to know? Most important thing to know when we're doing it.
Boundaries.
Yeah, the boundaries. Very good. All right, guys, if you join late, make sure you put your name and professor in the chat because that's how we're taking attendance today. I didn't call people out. All right, evidence-based practice, huge, huge, huge. This is what we're doing now. It's going to help us to improve nursing practice, right? And what we have to know is when we're putting evidence-based practice into effect, we need to recognize our own practice and know that best evidence will lead to improved outcomes. Some barriers that we tend to see are going to be implementing new technology, knowledge of research and current evidence, and practice characteristics such as leadership and colleague attitudes. So what we see with evidence-based practice oftentimes is people don't want to follow it because they say, where's this coming from? Where's the evidence to show me this? So know that that lack of ability to, you know, take on that new technology, maybe with evidence-based practice, you've changed your charting system. Anyone who works in healthcare knows how hard that is for employees to take on. So technology is going to be our key with implementing evidence-based practice. And what can we think about? If I were to ask you a question about evidence-based practice, what do you think I'm going to be emphasizing?
Possible barriers to implementing the new technology.
And what's the answer you would select, Kathleen?
The willingness of the employees to actually accept it.
Okay, and specifically what?
Is there enough knowledge?
Okay,
and
there's a word that starts
leadership
with a
to lead
T.
them?
What's the thing they're most hesitant to use that starts with a T?
Technology.
Knowledge.
Yep. So evidence-based practice, I want you to focus on technology, okay? the lack of willingness to take it on. And they say, they don't really want to do it. Any questions on this one? A lot of information on the study guide for this. What I want you to emphasize is our barriers, and our biggest one is going to be that technology. Okay. And then we move along to disaster and emergency preparedness, right? So we know about this. I want you to know this objective. We are going to have Healthy People 2020 objective for disease mitigation, which focuses on preparing, alerting, and caring for a disaster within a population. Okay, so we look at before the disasters occur, we're going to see what we can do to help prepare for it, to help do an alert system, and we're going to have us focusing on emergency risk messages going to the public. Home safety and safe driving is nice, but has nothing to do with disasters. Access to recycling centers is lovely for the environment, but nothing to do with disasters, right? So if I were going to come up with a question, and I keep asking you guys this because I want you to think when I'm emphasizing, what am I telling you on this one? What kind of question are we going to see on this?
What are the most
Select
important
all.
aspects of disaster management?
Okay, so give me a question that you can come up with this paragraph. What are we trying to do with Healthy People 2020? What are some important things that we're trying to do? The number one focus that we talk about is what?
Preparedness.
Okay, and exactly what? You're right, preparedness, very good, but how are we going to do that?
Improving response time.
You're almost there. Go back a little bit. Before you increase your response time, what are you going to make sure you're doing? What do you have to have in order to have a response time?
You have to know what the community needs.
Okay,
you know
and
a
how are we
plan?
going to let communities know this?
Send out an alert.
Yep. Very good, Kathleen. We're focusing here on Healthy People 2020 and that alerting system to the community. Home safety, and if I asked you what was one of the Healthy People, this isn't the question, but if I asked you what was one of the Healthy People objectives for disease mitigation, and I said A was creating an alert system, B was home safety and safe driving, C was access to recycling centers, what's your answer?
Alert.
A.
Yep. So emphasize in your heads, alert with disease, disaster management. Disasters are either natural or man-made. We know that. We talked about this in my class, and we should, I mean, that's kind of common knowledge. I feel like everyone should know. So think about, I want you to know examples of both. So we have natural ones that occur naturally. So you're going to have your earthquakes, your epidemics, your droughts, your hurricanes. Then we're going to have those that are man-made, and it's exactly what it says, man-made. So they come from humans and they've created this problem. So we look at pollution, we look at warfare, we look at fires and contamination. Is that pretty clear?
Yep.
I want you to just know examples of both. So I give you the examples there. And so that's what you're going to focus on. And when we are doing a disaster kit, important. I want you to know this one. When you're doing disaster kits with your community people, you're going to make sure that the family has enough for food for 3 days. Review the kit every 6 months. Okay, so don't get confused on those. Food for 3. Don't tell me it's food for 6 months, because your emergency kit would be bigger than a huge container of, I don't even know what I store my Christmas goods in. So I want you to remember, we're not doing 6 months of food, because it would go bad. And by the time we had 6 months, all right. And then ensure we know where it is and how to turn off our utilities. Okay. So 6 months, when you think about it, why are we doing 6 months? Making sure nothing expires. We want to know where it is. And we want to make sure that we know how to turn off the emergency things in the house, the utilities in the house. Right?
But you don't want your house to blow up because you've got a gas stove?
Right. Exactly. Good. I like that, and apply it. Think about what you have in your house. And if it were a disaster and something was going to happen or something was going to blow, you know, your electric lines, you want to know how to shut those off, your gas lines, all those. All right, good. So disaster kit, what do you think I'm emphasizing here?
3 days of food, review it every 6 months to make sure everything is still good, and nothing's expired. And and also that the family knows where to find it.
Yes, and I'm going to emphasize something again, which we just talked about. Utilities,
Utilities.
okay? Make sure they know where to put them, how to turn them on. Good. Okay, here we go to our mass casualty scenarios. Now, this was all with the disasters and stuff like that. So our purpose in these exercises is really to see how much time it takes. That's why we do it, so that we get it done. And we know that early response systems can decrease our casualties while increasing our resources. So what might we see on the question here? What might we see about mass casualties?
What is the priority outcome?
Great, fabulous. And what is it?
The
To
amount
see
of
how-
time it takes
Yep.
for,
Good. Keep going. The amount of time it takes for.
the amount of time it would take for the emergency response to be activated.
Yep. Here's an explanation why, but I want you to know that we're looking at the time it takes, okay? And I talked to my class because I'm a school nurse, so I talked about lockdown drills, fire alarms. Why we do it is to get it done and get it quick and see how long it'll take us. So what happens throughout the year is the fire alarms, the actual going outside and lining up and all that take less and less and less. And that's what you're trying to do. Watch your amount of time and try to get it done quickly, right? So the goal in these scenarios is to make sure with lockdown drill, same thing, because you want those kids to be familiar with where to go and what to do and how to be quiet and things like that, right? So and when you're in that kind of scenario, you want that done and you want it done quick, right? So just apply real life there. Please know the national response framework. So when a federal emergency has been declared, the national response framework can give stuff to the community. They can give transportation, they can give housing, they can give medical, search and rescue, and firefighting. So think about here what might look like a good thing to focus on when we're looking at the national response framework. You don't really, I mean, this one should be like kind of in your head, because the reason I say that is the words describe exactly what it is. The national, so we know that's nationwide. Response, so we're responding in some way, right? And framework, it's just a guideline for them to follow. Make sense? So when we're looking at a question that might have the national response framework in there, we're going to know, national, and I'm responding, and I have a couple different things, different areas I can go to. All right. This one is like a little funny-ish, but what I want you to know about primary, you're gonna see on there on your test, like you've always seen, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Here is an example of a primary prevention strategy when we're looking at economic issues. We just want to make sure that the insurance company is going to help provide the coverage. Why is that primary?
Because you're trying to prevent, like if something was to happen, you're trying to make sure they have enough coverage to help them go through whatever they have to go through, I guess.
Sure, and but remember, when they're primary, they don't have anything yet. So we got to do it beforehand, right? So it doesn't really help to go to the, insurance company and say, are you going to cover diabetic care? Because at that point, it doesn't really matter, no, does it? If the person has diabetes, then they're already going to need different type of preventative care. So just remember, primary is prevent. That's how I like you to remember these. P and P go together. So you're going to do something before something happens. A shift in the general approach to healthcare from acute towards primary prevention. We really are trying as everyone knows, like to do more primary prevention as nurses in the healthcare field rather than like acute. So like, by the time you're at acute, then you already have the problem. So that would be secondary or tertiary, right? So then we really focus on that primary, that first time, and the more we can do to prevent things from occurring for the community, the better off they'll be. Oops, sorry. Alrighty, we move on to teaching and educating, and this was something that I lectured to my class on over video, but anyway. What do we need to do when we're teaching? We need to see what's the problem. How are we going to teach it with our learning theories? And then what strategies are we going to use? So when you're planning a teaching, and I feel like at this point, we should be familiar with teaching. When we're developing an education-based program, we're going to need to know the first and foremost, kind of like our windshield survey. What are we going to need to know when we're teaching?
Let me mute myself.
What are we going to be? What is most important? What's most important with our windshield survey was what? Does anybody remember?
The boundaries or the
Very good.
parameters, yeah.
Yep. So when we're teaching, what do we have to look at first and foremost?
Their understanding and their education level.
So you're already ahead of the game. You're way up, Jen. Go back. What do we have to know before we do all of that? If we're going to teach to a group of people, what do we have to know?
What the population is, who's in the population.
Yeah, who are we teaching to? Because if we're going to teach to 5-year-olds, it's going to be very different than we're teaching to 55-year-olds, right? So when you're thinking about these things, what's the first thing? So that would be one of those priority questions, one of those nursing priority questions. A lot of times you need to do your ADPI. You're going to make sure you know who you're assessing before you assess, right? You're not just going to go knocking on some stranger's door and say, hey, I'm here to see how you're doing. So I want you to think about that. So very careful with who is your population. That's your primary focus. Clear on that one?
Yep.
Okay. So as you see, there's overlap, guys, with stuff like, with your windshield survey and with teaching and stuff like this. Do you know these 3? They're just definition. So the way I taught this to my class was affective, cognitive, and psychomotor. Psychomotor is when you're doing something physical. So I like to do mnemonics, like for nursing, I think it helps us. So psychomotor is physical. Affective has 2 F's in it for feeling, and cognitive is knowledge. All right, so if you forget them, that's how I remember them. Affective has 2 F's, so that means feeling. Psychomotor has P, and that's physical. And then cognitive is, I hope everyone knows the word cognitive at this point. It's just how you think, right? And that's our different domains of learning. So if I were to ask you for an example of teaching with an affective domain, what might I do? Or let's do cognitive. Maybe that'll be easier. If I ask for an example of cognitive teaching to our cognitive domain of learning, how might we do that?
Education.
Say what, Pete?
Would that basically be just the education of what's going on and what you want to teach them?
Yep. What we're doing right now is to the cognitive domain, providing information. I'm not saying to you, how do you feel about being a nursing student right now? Right? Because I don't want to know the answer. No, I'm just kidding. So I think a lot of us would probably all feel the same way how we feel about nursing school right now. But that would be me working towards our affective domain. What would be something psychomotor?
Skills lab.
Good. Excellent. Yep. Hands-on, being able to demonstrate. Okay. So good. Now our next one that we look at is how effective was our teaching. And I highlight here, and I italics and bolded, or teach back method. That's what I want you to know. The way you're going to see was teaching successful was you have them teach back to you. Okay. So for example, the group project you guys just did was a teach back technique. because you were teaching me what you should have learned about infectious diseases, right? I mean, you didn't actively teach back to me, and here we really like it better if you're like physically with the person, the kind of teach back, and then like I'm teaching somebody, I don't know, I'm teaching somebody how to,
Insulin injections.
yeah, it's good, insulin injections, right? And so I want them to do it in front of me. I'm gonna watch them do it, and you know, and they're gonna teach me as if I was learning, okay? So it's really good with teaching skills,
He's not here. Amen.
okay? Any questions on that?
Is Liza there?
No.
Can you guys mute? Somebody's talking about Liza. Can you just mute? Keys for designing an educational program. This continues on with our teaching, and we want to know that we want to be clear when we deliver it. We're not going to do a ton of information, right? We're going to do small, like limited number, and we're going to use an active voice. So we're not going to be bleh and just saying words with no rise in your voice or lower in your voice. What is one of our most successful things to use are handouts and posters. And we like to use stories and examples. That's why I like to tell my class examples, or I saw this, or they tell me what they've seen, because it helps you apply really. So what I want you to know is what's the first thing we do when we're designing an educational program? We just talked about that. It's not on this slide. What's our priority before we start?
Whatever your focus is.
Before you focus.
The group you're teaching.
Who you're teaching, right? We got to know who we're teaching, and then you can focus your stuff. But so remember, we got to know our population, and then we're going to use handouts and posters to help.
55-year-olds might enjoy cartoons with lots of bright colors.
They might. They might. Anybody. But some people really enjoy like videos, or you know, making a poster. It reminds me of kids, you know, younger kids, because they always, I don't know if everyone remembers, but in elementary school, you make like 7,000 posters for like the book you just read, and what am I learning in science today? And so just remember that when you're trying to remember, what do I need to know here? Handouts and posters are going to be really good, and make sure you know who you're teaching to. All right. Well, I want you to know about our 3 different groups of learners. So we have adult learners, we've Generation X learners, and the net generation. So no Generation X are going to be self-directed, and they like to work in teams. And then the next generation is going to prefer digital methods like web-based games. Baby boomer, you know, those older people, they're going to prefer a teacher teaching them, because that's what they're used to, right? So just think about the different generations and how they were raised, kind of. And then we see like our baby boomers may like case studies. Our Generation X, we're going to look at team working. And then we're going to have our millennials who, you know, we need technology to the end, because that's all they really want, right? So kind of common, just in your head, put them in the categories and say, what are they used to? All right, we move on to this one act, and I want you to know the definition for this act. Just know what it says. So Shepherd-Towner Maternity and Infancy Act, it was to work with mortality rates among moms and newborns, and it was an important role in the public health policy and public health nursing by develop screenings, health services, women and kids, defining the role of education and government, and designating client education as essential. So this is, what do you guys think about this? What's something I may ask you?
It might give us the definition of it and ask us which act it is. Multiple acts.
Good. And may I say the Shepherd-Towner Act did the following: created public health policies, developmental screenings, women and kids. Just remember, this maternity part of it in infancy. So it had to do with mom and kids, government and research, and education. Okay, so that's really a definitional one that I want you to know. Just know what it is. All right, when we look at our Healthy People 2020 objectives, we look at how it started in 2000. So in 2000 it started, and we wanted to improve Americans' health. So first goals, we were going to increase life, reduce health disparities, and improve access. Now we've gone to 2020 now. So we've now moved, and we also have 2030. But so we expand our goals. And for 2020, we're trying to look for a better quality of life and preventable diseases. So you see how it sort of graduates up. We start at the basic in 2000, and then we get a little more specific, and then we try to get, so we're focusing there on high quality life in 2020 and longer life free of preventable diseases. Clear on that one? Okay. All right, now these are going to be another one of those, like the ACT kind of thing. I want you to know what the World Health Organization does. So it is going to monitor adverse drug reactions, establish standards for vaccinations, disseminate biomedical research, provide information on internationally occurring diseases, and fostering the collaboration for public health initiatives between countries. So when we think about world health, we're trying to look at not just the whole world. So these are going to be very specific things that they do. Drug reactions, vaccines, biomedical research, internationally occurring diseases, and public health initiatives. Any questions on that? That one's pretty black and white, I can tell you that. Okay, and when you think in your head, what does the World Health Organization do? You should know that it's taking care of the world. So we're going to worry about the things that affect every single country, right? All right, now we have, and I will tell you, you guys need to know these. So we call it alphabet soup here because it's just like a bunch of letters and like, what does this mean? Blah, 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 right? So World Health Organization has a goal to attain the healthiest possible health for all people. I'm repeating here the services that we want with the World Health Organization. So if I were you, I would probably know those. So again, it's our drug reactions, our vaccines, our biomedical research, and international diseases and public health. Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality is going to be responsible for improving the quality and safety of healthcare. Okay, CDC is going to be responsible for monitoring health and detecting problems, and the Health Resources and Services Administration is going to improve health status by providing education and funding for healthcare professionals. The National Institute of Health is the center of it all. Okay, so these are kind of definitional. I just want you to know what they do. So World Health, we already said they do 5 things. And then we may be looking at something and say, who is responsible for improving the quality and safety of healthcare through measuring quality indicators? And we would say,
the Agency for Healthcare Research and
very
Quality.
good, yes. All right, so that's the kind of question you may get out of that. This means blah, 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 okay? We move on to case management. And case management, some of you probably practice as case managers. And so we're looking at the case manager process. We're going to try to make sure that our goal is for the clients to advocate. Okay. So we as case managers are advocate, and we're going to try to have our patients advocate for themselves and be able to take care of themselves. So for example, assessing and diagnosing, we're going to look at advocacy through exchange of information, gather of data, and highlighting values. So we're assessing, right? And then when we do advocacy for them, when we're trying to promote advocacy, we're going to inform them and affirm them. You know that nurse case managers work with a bunch of people. That's pretty much all it says. And that we do want to look for coordination of care. That's what a case manager does. They coordinate the care. So an example of a coordination of care would be what? Such as home equipment requirements. What might we see as an example of this? What's a home equipment? Piece of home equipment that someone may use that a case manager need to coordinate.
Bedside commode,
Very good. What else?
a raised toilet seat,
Yep,
a little gripper thing,
gripper
all
thing, good,
kinds of stuff.
good. What home equipment? So I went to look for specific equipment you would see in the home.
Concentrator,
Okay, what else?
Blood pressure monitoring.
Yeah, that's an equipment, yep.
A hospital bed.
We're gonna stick more with the first two. The blood pressure cuff, the oxygen, right? Those are things that you're gonna be given in the home that we wanna focus on as case managers. Pretty clear on that? I'm telling you what to know about case managers. Make sure they can coordinate care with home equipment. Okay? When we look at case managers, we were worried about liability. So know that malpractice, when we are saying this, these three things have happened. The provider had a duty to provide reasonable care. Something happened or didn't happen. And the act of not doing something or doing something caused injury or damage. Okay, so no, as case managers, we're trying to prevent that, but I want you to know what malpractice, why it occurs. Any questions on that? Okay. Skip that since I just. What a primary prevention. All right, so we're gonna look at primary prevention here, and we're gonna look at it as it relates to violence and human abuse. So we're going to educate, right? And go to the community and advocate. So we've used things like school-based ideas to teach kids and youth how to cope with anger, stress, and frustration so that we don't get to that abuse with them. Family programs that teach parents how to deal with kids because parents tend to use abuse sometimes when they're frustrated or don't know how to cope with their children. Preschool programs to develop social skills and intellectual skills. Public education programs that can educate communities about different forms of violence. And nurse home visitation programs with families at risk may prevent. Okay, so here's 5 examples of primary prevention when we look at violence and human abuse. Remember, we're trying to prevent it from happening. So we're going to educate, educate, educate. The next section is going to be about infectious disease. So I like this picture because it shows like a nice little thing. So here, if you have the measles and then you have an existing antibody, you're going to have some fighting off that can happen and it will clip on. Do you see how it matches up? It clips on to the measles. And then with our chicken pox, we have this antibody that's created from our vaccine for chicken pox. And what happens is it makes its own antibody, which is a little different than that one with measles. And then it can clip on and kind of hold on to it, right? So it doesn't expand. And then when we have a new pathogen like COVID and we didn't have a vaccine, then we had no antibody. And that was really causing a ruckus for everybody. We know that. Okay, so when we look at it, we know vaccines are one of the most effective ways of preventing and controlling communicable diseases. Know that diseases have not been eradicated. So you need your kids, as nurses, we need to educate those parents to get their kids vaccinated. No shots, no school regulation. I can tell you, working in a school, you ask everyone to get the vaccines, but they can they watch a video and sign off and say, well, too bad, I don't want to vaccinate my kids. So there's plenty of that goes on. It's interesting to see though that surveys show that inner city, minority, and ethnic are highly at risk for incomplete immunization. Why do you think that is? Why is inner city, minority, and ethnic groups going to be at risk?
Could be lack of access to care.
For sure. What else do we know about minority and ethnic groups?
lack of understanding and knowledge.
Because of
Language barriers.
Language.
Mhm. Right. So when you think about that, think about who's most at risk. So you're going to have those kids that are an inner city. You know, we've talked a lot about that. inner city, they may have access to care, but they may have other priorities that they need to take care of. So, you know, going to a clinic and getting vaccines may not be important, or they may not know to do it. So I have a lot of kids in my community whose moms and dads don't even know, because they're coming from a country where not all the vaccines that we have here are used. So it's very interesting to see. So be sensitive to that. And know that sometimes religious communities are gonna prohibit immunization, and children with parents who have objection, you know, and I think we all have met someone that has objection to it. Research suggests that adolescents have a lower rate of coverage than children or adults. And why is that? Because adolescents don't want to go to the doctor, right? They don't care. They think they're healthy, they're fine, right? To do that, that I want you to know. So this one's really big about, what's the question I may ask about this? Anybody? Nobody? The following are at risk for incomplete immunizations. A, middle-aged adults. B, children from rural areas. C, minority and
children.
ethnic groups. My answer would be
Minority and ethnic groups.
Yepers. All right, so vaccines, we know how good they are. And even if you don't like them yourself, as nurses, our job is to teach. So like, that's where we take our bias, we throw it out the window, right? We don't worry about what we think. We know what we're taught and what's medically, you know, there's a lot of people, there was when, well, particularly probably say 20 years ago, maybe, 15, 20 years ago, they were all like, everybody was against MMR. They thought it was causing autism. And I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. The science hasn't proven that it has. But I will tell you, as a parent, I was concerned about it. So I was like, I don't want to give something that could cause something, right? So, but my daughter's fully vaccinated, but I was hesitant when she was little because, you know, all the stuff you hear in the news. So be sensitive to that, guys, and where you really want to do. And I was educated as a mother by a pediatrician who said, you know, you got to do this because this is what's safe for your child. So just, you know, I wouldn't take that method. That was a little harsh, but, you know, a little more therapeutic. You can just say, this is why we vaccinate and this is what we've seen and all that stuff, right? All right, STD.
I had the mumps. I was not going to let my kids go through it.
Well, see, that's a
I
good
had the
reason.
chicken pox. I wasn't going to let them go through that either.
It's true. As parents, we really, you know, and I've met several, I have a very good friend who she doesn't believe in vaccines. So I tell her it's good to get, but she doesn't get them and she's got 3 kids. So, all right, STDs, major public health challenge in the US. We know that we have gonorrhea, syphilis and chlamydia, which are going to be our bacterial ones. We treat them with antibiotics. Those we all know caused by viruses cannot be controlled. Syphilis, we know, goes from mom to baby, and untreated in moms and babies, you see stillborn blindness, deafness, facial abnormalities, and disabilities. So anyone who's worked in labor and delivery knows that these STDs, you're checked twice at least during pregnancy, just to prevent things that could hurt the baby. All right. Now we move on to what we covered last week. And there was a ton of reading and a ton on the chapters, but I want you to know some definitions here. So surveillance is when we're going to look, the reason we do surveillance. Does anybody remember why we surveil? What's the point of it? What are we looking to identify?
They can understand what's going on within the community and understand the needs.
Very good. You want to see what's going on. So we're going to look for our disease trends. Improve health is our goal. Public health surveillance is a collection of, is a way that we can collect information so that we can monitor, prevent, and control spread. CDC indicates that public health surveillance is the foundation of public health practice. Okay. The purpose of our observation when we're doing this is to look at the public health status, identify what's going on, develop programs. The purpose of surveillance specifically is to reduce morbidity and mortality. Okay. It does not focus on eliminating community-based infections. Are we kind of clear on what our purpose of surveillance is? Morbidity and mortality, and controlling the disease, but not eliminating, because eliminating takes a lot of work. Surveillance systems are going to protect our public health. A passive system, here we come with passive and active again. Okay, passive system, remember, is like the quiet system. And so you rely on healthcare providers to report. In the active system, the healthcare department is going to go looking for cases. Okay, so passive is just if they report it. Active is when they come looking for it. And then in the third system, centennial system, we're going to look for indicators through specific cases. Okay. So I really want you to know on that one. I think I just need you to know. Yeah, I want you to know surveillance and our passive and active systems. Okay, so we see passive and active throughout this study guide several times. And we look at our patterns of occurrence, is what we just talked about. I did a second slide on our definitions to emphasize to you, we want to know our definitions. We have different phases when we're developing these community programs. So we said initially you have to do an assessment. Then a pre-active stage is going to be when we're going to project future needs. During reactive, we're going to see the problem that occurred already. And in the inactive, we're going to look at the problem when it's not occurring. Interactive describes programs using past data. We have a program that I want you to know this, the patch model, which is for that plans. Let me look at this next slide. I mean the next one. Hold on, I'll come back to that one. Where's my yeah. Okay, so patch program is something we look at. We're going to make sure that we do development. We're going to assess. We're going to mobilize their action, and we're going to do long range planning. So on these, I would focus on the different stages, the 3 stages really. So here's reactive, proactive, inactive, and interactive. Okay, so reactive, when something happens. Proactive, we're trying to remember it. Inactive is when we're not really doing much, and interactive is when everybody's all together. All right, so determining if a program has enough resources, we're going to be looking at sustainability. So can the program sustain itself? Okay. The ability to meet the objectives is an evaluation of the effectiveness. Adequacy is an evaluation to see if the program assess the need. We look at quality improvement, and it's how we look to make things better, right? So we're going to focus on improving performance. We're going to focus on preventing and identifying how we can improve. Okay, so with quality improvement, what is the one thing that you guys feel is a trend here? What are we really trying to do with quality improvement? What are we trying to get better?
You're improving their performances.
Good.
Prevent
Good.
things.
Yep, performance. That's what we're looking to do. Get the performance better. Okay, so think of quality. So continuous quality improvement, the word quality is in there. Just remember, when we're looking to do something better with quality, we're trying to get it better, right? Improve our performance. So we look at things like patient-centered care, teamwork, evidence-based practice, and our quality improvement and safety. We have one method that we use when we're evaluating, and that's the tracer method. And what I want you to know about that is it's most effective in evaluating the healthcare of groups than of individual clients. It's more effective in evaluating care. What happens is groups are selected in the tracer method, and that's what they are, they're traced. Okay, so they're like followed. So they all have something, this group of people, and they're being traced. They all have the same something. So either same disease with the same intervention, they have the same needs, they're in the same community, same lifestyle, same illness stage. Okay, so when we think of tracer, what word is important with tracer?
The same.
Yep, very good, Danielle. Same. So think about in these methods, we're looking at that. They all have to have a same. They're all a group. So obviously we're looking at the healthcare of a group. And how do we look at that? We look at that by that word same. So they're all the same, different, same disease, same place, same age, same, that kind of stuff. Okay. We have another, this is a surveillance program. I don't know. Let me see how much I want you to know about this. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. All right, when we're looking at quality improvement, we have different phases, and we want to go back to that. So this is all with surveillance and what are we doing to improve? What do we say our emphasis with quality improvement is? Jen said it.
You're improving the performance.
Good. So when we're improving the performance, we have different phases. The first phase is the structure phase. And what we're going to have is the nurse is going to make sure that the objectives align up with what we're trying to do with the job descriptions and our organizations. Then the process, the nurse is going to evaluate the quality of care by looking at nursing care procedures. And then in the outcome, we're going to evaluate and say, did our quality improvement improve client safety and health indicators? So quality improvement is really what we see going on in healthcare systems all over the world. They're always trying to get better. They're always trying to have the nurses perform better, less errors, that kind of thing. So when we're looking at quality improvement, I want you to know the different phases. So first one is structure, and there you're going to be seeing, does the job description and our standards, what we're looking for, are these nurses going to be able to do this because the hospital says they are? And then we go, the nurse will evaluate quality of care by looking at the different processes and then saying, this is what we should do better. And then when we're done, we're going to look at what our results were. Okay, any questions on quality improvement, surveillance? I know that's a ton of information. It was a ton of reading, and but I want to make sure that you guys know what we're emphasizing there. Yeah, good.
Yep.
Okay. We have the National Research Act when we start to look at ethics, and we talked about ethics in my class, I know, and I'm sure all of you guys did. I do want you to know our definitions that we have. And I think that's on my next slide, Yepers. All right, so beneficence is doing good. Justice is making sure everybody's equal. I can't say the word. Non-maleficence is doing no harm. And veracity is telling the truth. Okay, so I need you to know these definitions. So anybody have any clues on how to remember that?
Well, maleficence is, anything against, because mal is bad.
Good. That's a good one.
And beneficence is you're thinking of the benefit. So what's good about it?
Very good. So we have a B and a B, a benefit, and what's good. Excellent. What else?
Well, justice for all.
Good. And what does that mean? So when we're looking at justice, we're going to make sure that we're being fair and when we select people, right? And we're looking at them and treating them all the same.
Yeah,
So
we're not treating somebody poorly because they just don't have the money.
right. Good. Or because they're a male or because they're a female or anything like that, right? So we want to be really sensitive of all that. Know that the National Research Act and the National Commission for Protection of Human Services has ethical principles that we follow. We remember respect for people, promoting autonomy, minimizing risks. Justice is that we focus on fair selection, so equal all around. Okay, here's our definitions again. I liked benefit for this one. Mal is bad, so not bad. And then justice, we should say justice for all. That was good, Kathleen. All right. Okay. This is some more ethics that I want you to know about and know your terms here. Utilitarianism is and distributive justice, and you can see I'm getting tired. Just know that that's a paragraph on your study guide. Just know those definitions really. Look at social equality. I emphasize here again about Healthy People 2020 and Healthy People 2000, that general rule, and then 2020 was specific to high quality life and living longer life free of preventable diseases. Okay, I'm emphasizing to you, please know that. The last couple sections we're going to deal with is immigration. We've talked about this. We all know this. We just spoke about why vaccines are low. So when working with them, we want to make sure we're looking at the factors that are influencing their health care. So know that immigrants can face financial constraints because they come here. I don't know if anyone has had any experience with the with Afghani refugees that have come in the state of Colorado. We opened it up, so I've had several families come into our community, and you know, they're coming with a lot of trauma, and so they're coming here without a job. They're coming here to survive, to live, right? What kind of things happen? They can't speak English because they don't teach English in Afghanistan, and they may teach it at the college level, but they certainly don't teach it to young families. And then maybe there's something social, religious, or cultural. You know, lack of a healthcare provider also creates a problem, because if they don't have one, they don't know what are the needs, and family conflict can develop. Know that when you're looking at these families, it's stressful for every member of that family who has come to a new country. Okay, so this is kind of, I feel like a little common sense is, if you know anyone who's come here and not been from this country, you know what kind of things they've gone through. So we talked a little bit about the refugees, and they're just coming here. They are running away, literally running away. So know that sometimes they've left with, you know, under terrible circumstances, and they're going to have trauma. Our priority is to access therapy. Knowing that getting public transportation, knowing the social norms and communication barriers are fine, but our priority for them is getting therapy if they've gone through that trauma. Okay, because sometimes they will get stuck in that and will be afraid, you know, will be afraid to even leave their homes because they don't know what they're going to come across. And please, please know these two slides. Native Americans are past oriented and will not be concerned about the future. So we are not going to tell them, call in 3 weeks for a follow-up. That's futuristic for them. We're going to say, we're going to schedule the appointment for you and say your appointment is scheduled. It's 3 weeks out. This is the date. This is the time. Okay. So just know that about Native Americans. They're not going to be worried about the future. So when you say call in 3 weeks, they're not going to pay any attention to that. Okay. And then when we look at our Hispanic communication, avoid the use of negative expressions because they find that impolite. They like direct eye contact, and they will like physical contact during communication. Does anybody know that a culture that's opposite of this, where they do not look you in the eye and they do not want you touching them?
Isn't that Oriental?
Yeah, Asian. You see a lot of Asian cultures. Yep. Where they're like, they won't look at you. And if you touch them, that's even worse. But with Hispanic people, no, we're going to really avoid use of negative expressions. That's really going to turn them off, kind of. And so we're going to have direct eye contact and physical communication. And I believe that is our last slide. It sure is. Okay, so we have had a lot of information that we covered tonight. What would you guys like to do at this point? What would be most helpful? Do you want to do a Kahoot? Do you want to go over something you don't understand? You tell me. I won't be offended either way. You want to go home? I mean, you want to stop listening to me? That's fine.
I have a question. What time
Yeah.
did this start?
It
It's my
started at 4 o'clock.
Oh my God, because my paper said 5:30. That's why I joined at 5:30.
No, yep, it was 4 o'clock. I don't know what paper went out for 5:30. I know we all-
Mine says 6:30 to 8:30.
That's Eastern Standard Time, correct?
No, I'm in Central Time, so it would be 5.
Well, it's on, I can show you what I mean, I can't speak to everybody. I don't know what other professors put out there. I only know for my class what we all had the same time on it. So, but I will post a recording and send it to your professors so you guys can review it if you'd like. We had several people here at 4, so for my time, sorry. So 6 your time or 5 your time or whatever. We had plenty of people on here. So I don't know which class was the mix up, but I apologize for that.
I think it was Lundy.
Yeah, so I apologize for that. We all should have sent out the same information. So, but I'll send you my recording to Dr. Lundy and she can share it with you.
Okay, do you know how long that will be to post?
As soon as I have it saved to YouTube, I'll share it. I can't speak to how long it'll take for people to post it, other professors, right? Because I don't know what they're doing. It's Friday night and they probably don't want to hear from me right now. So
No, you're good.
I have a question.
go ahead.
So my paper said that it was going to start at 6:30 Eastern time, which been 4:30 Central or Mountain and 5:30 on Central.
Yep.
So what time is it for sure that tomorrow they're going to start at 9 Mountain? And
Tell me whose are you attending tomorrow? I'll text them right now.
That's Marvel.
Okay. Well, you know,
And
she's
then-
not in this country right now, right?
No. And then Apple is supposed to be Sunday at 4 to 6 Eastern time. Is that going to be the
Okay,
correct
tell me
time?
what time Dr. Marvel's is for you tomorrow.
It says 11 to 1 Eastern.
Okay, and then Professor Apple, I'll text her as well.
And hers is at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, that's what it has on the paper.
All right, 4 to 6 Eastern on Sunday, right?
Yeah. And yours was today at 5:30 to 7:30 Central Time, which is my time.
Okay, so 5, that's correct. So it would have been 4:30 Mountain Time. And so what we did was I started at 4, which I had informed the professors, but so 5:30 Central Time is 6:30 Eastern Time is 4:30 Mountain Standard Time. So you should have been on here at 4:30 my time, 5:30 your time.
Yeah.
Right, okay, just so we're clear. So I often run my exam reviews at 4:30. I had an opportunity to run it a little earlier. The reason I started it at 4 and told the other professors that I started it at 4 was because it gave you guys more of your Friday night to yourself, to be honest with you. And I do know, I'm sorry, I have a dog that likes. I do know Friday nights are valuable. I'm not saying that we're all going out and, tripping the lights or whatever they say, but I know Fridays are sometimes time you like to spend with family. So I try to be sensitive to that the best I can while working another job. So other than that, though, the recording will go out to your professors. So that's all I can speak to. And I'm sorry, there was a misunderstanding for this one.
No, it's okay. I was actually on at 2:30 today thinking it was Friday or Thursday.
Saturday.
No.
I know it's really hard too when we all are in different time zones. That has been a problem across the board because everybody you say something like, oh, it's at 4:30 and then you're like, oh no, it's 6:30. Oh no, it's 5:30. So I understand and I apologize, like I said, for the confusion. That's a common one that we've seen. But I will record it and send it out to you guys.
Now, if we did a Kahoot, would that be like questions that you made for the exam 3 or just like for the last few weeks?
So I can do whatever you guys would like. I have 3. One is an ad pi, one is a primary, secondary, and tertiary. One is a like general type. I can do the ones from the week If you guys, some of you guys, I don't know what other professors do. I'm so sorry. I don't know what other professors do. If they don't do Kahoots sometimes, then those are helpful. So I'm up for game, whatever you guys want. And if you don't want to do Kahoots, you can tune out.
We have access to them at any time though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I sent them out to my class as an announcement where they could review them at any time because, you know, that makes it easy. So any other questions?
No, we really appreciate your time.
Oh, well, yes, of course. I will tell you my experience with review sessions, and I will tell each and every one of you, since you're on my review session, I emphasize on your study sheet what you need to know. So if you got out of this anything, I hope you got out of it. Emphasize this, remember this, you know, and I know it's a lot of me talking and I apologize for that, but I just want to guide you because I know as I've shared with my class, I went to nursing school. I've gone to, you know, I have my master's degree. I know it's a lot of work. So I'm trying to help you the best I can. If you have any questions at all, I will put my email in the chat. I'm happy for you to email me. I can go over anything with anybody, you know, if you need to, but I'm glad that all of you guys joined and I hope that it's helpful. And this is our third test. So we're like almost there. And I think you guys are going to do fine. If you listen to my review session, I think you'll be good. And what I would do is go over it, listen to it in the car. You know, listen to it everywhere because the more you hear it and when you practice and sometimes using fingers like, you know, primary, this is what I need to know. Like, you know, that tends to help people. That's psychomotor, like we were talking about, but I found that's really helpful. Good.
Great. Thank you so much.
All righty, guys. Good luck to you. Best of luck. Don't forget to download your exams prior.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Sure.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, good night.
Good night.